right, thank you for joining. My name is Eric Vanderveer, and I'm going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity within small to medium-sized businesses. So cybersecurity is definitely a hot button topic of conversation these days. But if you're an SMB owner, you don't have to stay awake every night wondering if you will have a cybersecurity incident. All you need is a plan to point you in the direction of becoming secure. So during this webinar, if you have any questions, please provide them in the chat feature, which is located at the bottom of the Zoom screen, or your tool there that shows the chat feature. And then I'll try to answer any of these questions at the end. So yes, my name is Eric Vanderveer, owner of Intricate Security. I've been working in the IT field for over 20 years, and for the past 5 years, I switched over and focused more on the security aspect of IT. I do everything from penetration testing, incident response, network forensics, network monitoring, and even security assessments of your company. I'm also a volunteer for the Michigan Cyber Civilian Corps. Think of it as the National Guard for security with the state of Michigan. We're a group of professionals in the cybersecurity realm that help the governor in the state of Michigan if there's any type of security incident or any breaches. We're called in to help the state police to investigate that. So let's start right off the bat with statistics. So according to new statistics released by the FBI and the U.S. Secret Service, small businesses are targeted more than bigger organizations. So while threats of cyber attacks are all over the news lately, they are not just overrated. A small business suffers 60% of cyber attacks, which lead it to folding within 6 months. So, and why do they fold? One is they lack sufficient security measures and trained personnel. So a recent survey revealed that many small to medium-sized business owners in the United States are not prepared to prevent a data breach. Next thing is they store sensitive data that hackers want. For example, credit card numbers, protected personal or protected health information, or PII or PHI. And if you don't have any data, you do have money. So hackers will use ransomware to get you to pay to get your data back. Another thing is why they fold, they don't have a good backup policy in place. And even if you don't, it's not always tested. Or I mean, if you do even have a backup policy, it's not always tested to confirm that those backups are actually working. And last thing is they connect to a larger supply chain company and then are leveraged to break in. So let me give an example of that. One of the most famous hacks was with Target back in 2013. Hackers stole credentials that were used for this HVAC company to maintain Target's heating and cooling system within their network. So the account that they had was actually a Target account, and the hackers broke into this small company that had these credentials and then got into Target. The Cybersecurity Breaches Survey 2017 revealed that 43% of small businesses admit they have not provided their staff with any cybersecurity training. Another reason for hackers to target SMBs. So no cybersecurity training. Social engineering. Cyber criminals are stepping up their game. These malicious actors know when to dial it up and when to dial it down. When the increased use of social media and email, hackers are not only going after companies' websites to attack, but they're also going after the end user or your employees. And they're successful in doing it. Training. While 75% of businesses train their employees on how to avoid phishing, only a quarter provides training for social engineering. On social engineering. This minimizes the number of inadvertent security breaches that could happen. And it's not just about the shiny toy. So what I mean here is you need both the security appliances, and when I say security appliances, I'm talking about your firewalls, your malware EDR systems, your spam protection devices. And then you also need the knowledge of your employees to really get a hold of securing your business. $100 lock just won't save you if someone has a set of keys. A GFI software survey shows that almost 1/4 of small businesses experienced at least 8 hours of downtime after being attacked, with over half facing downtime between 1 and 6 hours. Only about 10% of those businesses reported spending less than, say, 3 hours recovering from an attack. At least 8 hours of downtime? Well, ransomware is one big key. It seems that ransomware attacks are on the rise, says a new report from the U.S. Computer Emergency Readiness Team, or US CERT for short. This malicious program, which can encrypt all your data, which will then will need to be decrypted with a key that the hackers have, that you pay them for. This can cause a significant disruption in a company's business operations if not taken care of immediately. Loss of revenue. The May 2017 report published by Verizon just revealed some startling statistics around cyber attacks. 54% of all attacks are causing damages greater than $500,000. It includes both financial damage to the company and loss of customer data. There's so much security. How am I going to, what am I going to do? So confusion is not needed in your security program. Internal network security is a critical aspect of any business ability to function. So every day in the SMB market, we hear more and more stories of one-off attacks that have companies millions of dollars from successful breaches. Cyber attacks and data breaches pose a significant threat to businesses, both large and small. So according to Verizon, 62% of small businesses have reported at least one cyber attack in the previous year and have had a severe impact on the business. So it's not if you're going to get hacked, but when. So this number has grown. According to Hiscox's cybersecurity report, cybercrime cost SMBs $328 million in 2018. Businesses have been getting more aware of cybercrime in the past years, but however, as cyber attacks have increased by 45 to 61%, SMBs are still falling prey to cyber criminals. So SMBs are prime targets. Did you know that 43% of all cyber attacks are done on SMBs? These statistics don't surprise me because 80% of small businesses have no idea what to do or who to turn to when they are a victim of a cyber attack. Cybersecurity insurance. As cybersecurity threats increase, cybersecurity insurance and cyber liability insurance have become important issues. And then one last thing is nothing is 100% effective. Saying you'll never get a security breach is like saying you'll never be in a car accident on your way to work. So do I have your attention? Your business is important, and we know that you're eager to learn more about cybersecurity. So I'm going to talk to you about some steps you can do to start your journey. These steps are from the cybersecurity framework from the Center for Internet Information Security called the CIS Top 18. We're just going to cover the first 5. And when I say the first 5, it's the first top 5. So belief number 1, I know every device that is on my network. One major hurdle in having a secure business is knowing what devices are on your network. This can pose several security problems. What about IoT? And IoT means Internet of Things. And I'll go into that in just a moment. But this first control is the CIS control number 1, inventory and control of enterprise assets. So Internet of Things are devices such as smart TVs, IP cameras, your Alexa or your Google Mini, smart thermostats, wearables, barcode readers. These all are little computers, and they have software in them, and they sit in your network. So do you have software that can actively scan your network when these new devices jump on board? Not just these Internet of Things, but like say another laptop or another computer gets connected to your network. All of these IoT devices I just told you about are computers and they're vulnerable. Smart TV example. If your smart TV has a camera in it, these could be hacked and then used to spy on you. So here's some security issue examples with not knowing what's on your network, the hardware. Number one, never patched or not able to be patched. A big security issue is that if you are unaware of these devices, you forget to patch them. These are actually small little computers that are on your network. And if they are on your network, they are accessible by anyone on that network. If the devices are not patched, vulnerabilities will be exposed and then they can be exploited. These vulnerabilities could allow even more damage by allowing a hacker to move around the network or gain sensitive data. So examples, these are called botnets. And what a botnet is when a hacker starts compromising tons of different devices on the internet. For example, these IoT devices like smart cameras, or IP cameras, or smart TVs. And then they use all these devices that they've compromised and control them to send massive amounts of data to networks to bring them down. So the Mirai botnet in October of 2016 actually brought down a huge portion of the internet. Things such as Twitter, Reddit, and CNN were all brought down because of this Mirai botnet. Number two, default passwords not changed. When setting up these devices, a lot of times the default passwords are not changed, because when you get these devices, you have to get into them. So they all have default passwords. And then if they're not changed, they're exposed to admin access by a malicious actor that maybe has gotten on your network. I can tell you that when we do penetration tests for our clients, we have found devices that were not set up properly and actually had the default password. We just looked up to see what kind of device it was, went on the internet, searched for the default password for this device, and we got it. It happens. Last thing is insecure networks. Insecure networks can be networks that allow any device to connect to it, be it either wireless or wired. Someone could plug a device that could do malicious things, for example. There's a device that could be plugged into your network that could trick your employees to connect to it when going through the internet, and then allow that person to see all the traffic of your employees. So here's things you can do to help with this security control, to be ready for it. One, run active scans on your network to view all IP devices up and online. An increasing number of security breaches are being made possible by the presence of what's called silent devices on your network, devices you don't know are there. DHCP logs can be a great, easy way to see what is on your network. DHCP is a service that hands out IP addresses. And the IP address is what an IP address is a way for, it's a number a computer gets so that it can talk to other devices on the network and even talk out to the internet. But this DHCP service is what hands out these IP addresses to all your devices that connect to your network. And they hold logs of every time a new device gets on your network and asks for an IP address. So that's one way of checking to see what's on your network. Another thing is to maintain an accurate and up-to-date inventory of all your network devices. This includes computers, servers, printers, cameras, anything that, like I was mentioning with the IoT devices. Having an accurate and up-to-date inventory is one of the most crucial parts of a security audit, because ultimately you cannot protect what you do not know about. And last, make sure to remove any unauthorized devices as soon as possible. Conduct regular audits of your network to ensure unauthorized devices are not connected to your network. Belief number 2, employee. I need this software to do my job. I don't need to tell IT. you should let your employees know that you'll provide them with computers that come pre-installed with all the necessary software and updates. What's it going to hurt? This is about CIS control number 2, inventory and control of software assets. So the last control was about inventorying your hardware assets. Now you need to know what type of software you have on your hardware. Number 1, patching needs to be done. Just like hardware, normally the IT department of an IT consultant handles patching software that is used by company computers. Number 2, has the software been tested on another workstation? You need to make sure that the software won't do something to the computer that could make it non-functional. And then where did you download it from? Did you download it from a site that was the company that actually created the software? Or did you find it from somewhere else on the internet? So here's some security issue examples with this control. Number 1, has never been updated to fix vulnerabilities. If your IT does not know what is installed in your computer, they can't make sure that it gets updated if a security patch is published by the company of the software. Number 2, can be the factor in a company breach. At least 1/3 of IT departments admit that they were breached as a result of unpatched software. This was found by a survey by the security company Tripwire. And number 3, the less software installed, the less of a chance of a security risk. So the more software that you have installed on your computer, the more time your IT consultants or your IT department have to spend installing patches. Only install the software that the company has approved and is what is needed to do your job. There's things to help with this control. Utilize automated software inventory tools to alert when new software is installed. So this can help you track changes within your network while keeping your information secure. There's different types of software out there that can do this. There's free stuff out there. There's paid stuff out there. And then make sure your employees do not log in with administrative rights. Make sure your employees don't have admin accounts. Make sure that they're a non-admin account. This will prevent software installation and ensure that they are not able to install malicious software in the company's network. So a non-admin account is just an account that gets on a computer and can then just do their job, either check mail, open up documents, work on web application programs on the web, stuff like that. They can't go and start making changes or installing software if they're not an admin. Use software such as App Locker by Microsoft to prevent software being installed that is not approved. So software such as App Locker can be used to prevent software from being installed. This way, if someone tries to install a different antivirus product on their machine, they'll be blocked by the App Locker rule and told they cannot proceed unless they contact IT support first. And then last, create an acceptable use or software policy to let employees know not to install software. A software policy is a great way for employers to let their employees know what is and isn't allowed on their computer. If you don't want your employees installing new software on their computers, then you should include that in your policy. Belief number 3, my employees only have access to the data they need in the network. One of the best ways to prevent cyber attacks is to prevent employees from accessing data that is not assigned to them. This means that you should have a system in place that allows you to monitor who is accessing what data and what they are doing with it. This way, if an employee attempts to access data outside of their job description, you will be notified immediately. Are you sure you know if they don't have access? Control number 3. Data protection. 1, do you have a data management process? So this process will make sure you're doing all the right steps in protecting your data. Things such as retention policy, which is how long are you keeping your data? Disposing of your data, such as your physical hard drives. What do you do when your computer is decommissioned? Do you destroy the hard drives if there's sensitive data on it? And then, handling of that sensitive data is another thing to consider. Number 2, Do you have permissions in place for user access? So if your data is stored in the cloud or on premise within your network physical environment, you should absolutely have access control lists in place to ensure that only the users who need access are given access. And one thing that could be is if they're given access to a certain part of data, do they just have read access? Do they have read and write access? That stuff has to be set up in what's called ACLs or access control lists. And the last thing, do you prevent data loss prevention or DLP? Data loss prevention is a category of software used to monitor data leaving your infrastructure. It can be used in the cloud or on premise, and there are a range of different ways it can be used. So for example, you might want to use DLP to prevent sensitive data from leaving your infrastructure, such as credit card information, credit card numbers, or social security numbers. So here's some examples, security issues. Loss of data either by wiping or transmitting. If you do not have a data backup plan or you do not have a data loss prevention procedure in place, sensitive data could be lost or stolen. Number two, data loss prevention can be done through phishing attacks. Insider threats are a possibility, and one type of insider threat is non-malicious insider. So this is one who has no idea they are sending sensitive data to someone who has malicious or alternative motives. And then no backup protection against ransomware. If you're not backing up your data or doing backup checks on your data, you may not be able to recover from files that have been encrypted from ransomware. All right, so things you can do to help protect you against this control. Have a backup policy in place and do backup testing to make sure backups are working. Make sure you're also doing what's called an incremental backup along with full backups. And so, of course, most departments will do a full backup, usually once a week. But during that week, of course, files can change. People are editing and changing and adding. So what you'll do is what's called an incremental backup. You back up the files of that day that have been changed since the previous full backup. Set up access control lists for all users on what data they have access to. Only allow the users access to the data they need to do their work. Someone in sales does not need to see someone's payroll and accounting. Implement DLP protection within your company. Microsoft 365 actually has DLP protections that can be implemented with its applications. So these applications look for keywords, like I mentioned before, for social security numbers and credit card numbers. Microsoft 365, if you're using them for your email, depending on what type of license you have, you can utilize them to set up rules to watch for this stuff and block it if they see it going out. And then the last thing is you encrypt your data at rest and in transit. When I say at rest, encrypting your data at rest is actually encrypting your data that's staying dormant on a hard drive. So encrypt that, and that could be encrypting either workstations, laptops, phones, or tablets. And then make sure that when you're sending data over the internet, that you're using secure methods such as TLS 1.2 or 1.3, and TLS. It's a protocol used to transmit data securely. Web pages, web browsers use this to make sure that they're using the best sensitive encryption protocols to make sure that they're sending data correctly and securely. Examples would be going to a website that has HTTPS in front of it. That means it's secure. Excuse me. Belief number 4, the new and improved secure firewall that I just spent tons of money on should work right out of the box, right? There is so much that needs to be configured and set up on any new security device. Each company's environment is going to be different, and planning is needed to make sure you set everything up just right. So don't set and forget. CIS control number 4. secure configuration of enterprise assets and software. Number one, are you removing default settings on new appliances? This can be making sure you're changing the default passwords and turning off features you're not using. So for example, services like web access. A lot of these security devices, in order to be controlled, have to be accessible from the web. So if you're using that, turn it on. If you're not, turn it off. That's just one way to get access to a device. So if you're not using that type of service, turn it off. Do you have control over portable devices? So do you have a mobile device management process in place? Can you wipe a mobile device if a user leaves it or if the device is stolen? This can be laptops and phones. And then third, do you have a device lockout procedure? So if a device is stolen and the person who stole it is trying to crack the password, are you setting a lockout of the device after a failed number of attempts? Some security issue examples for this. Number one, access to company data. If a hacker can gain access to a mobile device, they can gain access to sensitive data that may already be accessible right from the device. So being able to wipe a device as soon as you know it's been compromised is key. Number two, changes made to network security appliances by non-admin users or hackers. If you just plug in a network security device into your network and don't change default settings, they can be compromised. Most of these default settings can be found online by searching the internet or going to the documentation of the device. All of this is open to the public. Unnecessary services running on a device can allow a user to break in and take control. A lot of break-ins are a result of not turning off services on devices that are not needed, such as a device that can be controlled by a web interface or through command line or terminal emulation. Turn on only what is needed to administer devices such as these. Things you can do to help with this control to secure your network. Go through the recommended setup process for your software or appliances and change default settings. Most appliances like switches and routers and firewalls have default settings like user accounts. Some may have more than one. Go through and change the passwords and disable any accounts that you're not using. Making sure you're are locking out devices after a certain amount of failure login attempts. So a device was stolen. Okay, well, have your staff let you know right away so that they can push out a wipe to the phone once it receives internet access. This is most effective if devices have cell data capability, but not always. BYOD, bring your own device. Probably hear that a lot, that jargon term in the business. Make sure to separate enterprises, workspaces on end user devices, if personally owned. Bring your own device is the norm in companies since it can save costs and most everyone in the world has a cell phone. So for managing purposes, have separate workspaces on those phones, one for on the phone for the personal use applications, and you can also have a section that's just for work use applications. So that if a phone is compromised or stolen, you can wipe the phone, but just the work section area. So the person's personal stuff won't get wiped. And then last thing is turn off services and appliances or software. I mentioned this a few times already. Just turn off any services you're not needing, like the web applications or FTP service or whatever. If the service is not needed for that device, shut it off. Belief number 5, 7-character passwords are secure enough. PCI compliance says so. So passwords are the first line of defense in protecting your business's data. They're also the most common way that people get hacked because sometimes they're easy to guess and then they're also hard to remember. So this next screen gives me a diagram of how easy it is for a hacker to crack a password. So this was from 2021. And every year, these times that you see on here get shorter and shorter because computers get faster and more powerful every year. So, for example, if you look there, the number of characters, look at number 7. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, maybe not, but if you look at number 7, and then you look at a password with 7 characters that has both numbers, upper and lowercase letters, and symbols, it can actually be cracked in 6 minutes by a very powerful computer. So that's pretty scary for 7. Now, I do, if your policy does have 7 or 8 characters, the only way that I would say that it's allowable is if you're using what's called MFA, or multi-factor authentication. And what that is if you put in a password that's one authentication type, and as soon as you put your password in, another type of authentication comes up and asks. One example is what's called, you can have a program that can generate 6 numbers every 60 seconds. And you would go to that application, look up your account, and find out what the 6 numbers are for that 60 seconds. Put it in there and get in. If you don't have it, you can't get in with that password. So such and such says, well, don't always believe a lot of the compliance is what they say. Just the PCI one there, 7 characters. I don't really agree with that, but anyway, that's what they recommend. This one here is CIS control number 5, account management. So one thing is within this control talks about, do you know all the accounts in your network? You should know who your users are and what privileges they have. Audit these inventories at least quarterly, so to make sure that everyone is still an employee and either has admin or non-admin accounts. Number 2, how unique are your passwords? PCI compliance states that 7 characters is enough. Well, in 2021, like I was showing there, it can take a computer 6 minutes to crack a password. Unless you're doing MFA, I would go at least 12 to 15 characters. Are you doing non-admin work on your admin account? So if you are an IT administrator and you're on your computer, your workstation, and you're doing non-administrative work, just writing up documents, viewing the web, you should not be logged in with an admin account. You should have 2 different types of accounts. An admin account to log into when you need to do changes within your network environment, and then a non-admin account to do daily work that's not administrative, like I was saying, documents or viewing the web. Because here's an example. If you are logged in with an admin account on your computer and you happen to be browsing the web and you go to a site that's been compromised, you could get malware downloaded on your computer, and then a hacker can then gain your computer, and you're already logged in as an admin. He then now has full admin rights. So here's some security issue examples with this. 1, able to breach your network. Having a good account management process includes having a good password policy. Just this year, in fact, just about a couple months ago, the company AMD, which is, you may not know who AMD is, but it's a company they do the same thing as Intel. They make processors for computers. Intel is their competition. They were hacked, and the data stolen, the data was stolen because they used weak passwords. Number 2, hackers may be able to establish persistence. One of the most common ways a hacker can establish persistence, and what I mean by persistence is a way for a hacker to maintain a constant connection within your network. Either they've gained access to a computer and they find ways of being able to stay in that computer, even if the person, the IT, finds the malware and removes it. They find other ways to hide themselves so that when you reboot the computer, they're back in. Here's some things that you can do to help protect on this control. So establish and maintain an inventory of accounts. Inventory sheets should contain the employee's name, username, start and stop dates, and the department the user is in. Do not, I emphasize, do not store passwords inside those spreadsheets with your user accounts. So if your computer is compromised, they can see all those files and they can get all those passwords. This so the next thing is use unique passwords. Make sure you are using secure passwords with at least 12 or 14 characters, which include upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. Now 12 and 14, it's, I'm sure a lot of people are going to complain, I'm never going to remember that. One thing you could try doing is promoting password phrases. And these phrases could contain a phrase, maybe a line from a song that they're familiar with, or something from a book, a small little sentence. It doesn't have to be too long, but something that they'll remember. And then change some of the letters to different characters, like an A to an @ sign, or an S to a $sign. And then put a character in for a space. Something that would be easy for them to remember, but still complex enough because you've got you've got numbers, you've got letters, and you've got symbols in there. Next thing, disable dormant accounts. So disable accounts that have not been used after a period of, let's say, 45 or 90 days. And this is going to depend on how frequent accounts are used in your company. You may have salesmen that may not log into their computers for 3 or 4 weeks because they're out on the road. So you may just say, okay, I'll give them more time when their accounts have been, dormant for a while. So it's up to you how to figure that out. And then the last thing is centralize account management. So use Windows Active Directory or Azure Active Directory to keep all your accounts listed and controlled in one location. And if you're not familiar with what Windows Active Directory or Azure Active Directory is, talk to your IT department. It's what a lot of companies use to keep everything in one central location, all the computers, users, and then managed in one central location. Okay, that is the end of my thing here, and bear with me 1 second here. Okay, so thank you for listening in on this webinar. What we're going to do is we're going to offer a free consultation with all of our webinar people that attended the webinar, and we're going to go over the 5 controls that were discussed and work with you to make sure you're doing them. So if you're not, we can help you, and we'll help you put together a plan, later on to start implementing them. We'll also do a quick check to see how the other 13 controls that weren't talked about in here, if you're utilizing anything and what you need to be doing with these other controls. And so let me I'm gonna go through real quick what these other 13 controls are. So we did 1 through 5. 6 was access control management. Are you allowing your users the correct access to what they need to do their job? You don't want a department to have access to another department's files. It's very similar to one of the, I think, number 4, and they kind of go hand in hand. Number 7, continuous vulnerability management. We'll work with you to set up a vulnerability management policy that consists of at least quarterly vulnerability scans of your network, making sure your devices are patched, and if they're not, it will tell us if they're vulnerable or not. Number 8, audit log management. This will entail helping you audit the correct log information that's happening to your network, so that you can use if you ever have an incident or breach, you can go back to those logs to see what happened. Number 9, email and web browser protection. We'll talk with you to make sure you're using the most secure email and web browsers, and then surfing and reading from those. They can consist of using only approved browsers. You just don't want people using, let's say, Firefox and then Chrome, both of them using at the same time. Say, hey, we're just going to use Firefox. That way IT can maintain one browser. And then number 10, malware defenses. We'll review what anti-malware resources you're using and make sure you're set up properly. Data recovery. Can you recover from a ransomware attack? We'll discuss how you're doing your backups. Network infrastructure management. Do you have a good network diagram of your infrastructure? What are you doing to secure your network and its communication? Or 13, network monitoring and defense. What are you doing to monitor your network? Are you using an EDR or just a plain old antivirus software? Number 14, security awareness and skill training. Are you training your employees? Are you using third-party programs like KnowBe4 to do this? Number 15, service provider management. What third-party service providers are you using? Do you maintain and inventory them? So for example, service providers such as like your email, your internet provider, your physical security provider, any type of third service provider, are you inventorying who they are and what they do? Number 16, application software security. We'll review security measures that you use if you create your own application software. If you're not doing application software, you don't have to worry about this. Number 17, incident response management. What policies do you have in place in case if you ever have a security incident or a breach? And then last, number 18, penetration testing. Annual pen tests may be something that should be discussed for your company. They help provide insight to security issues within your environment. Hey, we know that cybersecurity is a concern for you, and we want to help you stay secure. So we offer an array of services that you can protect your business from cyber attacks. We can help you understand how to protect yourself and your employees from phishing scams, malware, and other forms of cybercrime. If you're already suffering from a cyber attack, we can help restore your system or even recover lost data. So our team will work with you to develop a plan that's right for your business. Whether you want us to handle everything or just some aspects of your security needs, we're here to help.